They say the loudest voice in the room is the one that matters, but reality whispers something far more unsettling. Sometimes the quietest presence carries the heaviest story, and no one notices. You can be surrounded by people, laughter echoing, conversations flowing, and still feel like a ghost standing in plain sight, seen but not recognized, heard but not understood. Why does this happen? Why do some people disappear in rooms where they physically exist? Is it shyness or something deeper, something learned over time? This silent invisibility is more common than anyone admits, and beneath it lies a truth few dare to explore. Let's begin. It rarely happens all at once. No sudden moment, no clear line where everything changes. Instead, it begins quietly, almost unnoticeably. A sentence you didn't finish because someone spoke over you. A thought you held back because it didn't feel important enough. A moment where you waited to be acknowledged and weren't. And so, without realizing it, you step back, just a little. At first, it feels like politeness, like giving others space. But over time, that small step becomes a pattern. You speak less, you interrupt less, you expect less. Until one day, you notice something unsettling. You are there, physically present in the room, but no one turns toward you anymore. Have you ever felt that shift? Where conversations flow around you, but never include you? Where laughter fills the air but somehow never reaches you? Where you nod, smile, react, but inside something feels distant? It's not always about rejection. Sometimes no one is actively ignoring you, and yet the feeling remains, like being a shadow in a place full of light. The mind begins to make quiet adjustments. It tells you to stay smaller, to take up less space, to observe instead of participate. And strangely, it starts to feel safer that way. Because when you don't expect to be seen, you don't have to feel the sting of being overlooked. But this safety comes at a cost. You begin to disappear in subtle ways, not just from others, but from yourself. Your voice becomes something you rehearse internally, but rarely release into the world. Your thoughts grow rich and complex, but remain unheard like unopened letters. And over time, a quiet belief starts to form, not loud, not obvious, but deeply rooted. Maybe I'm just not someone people notice. This belief doesn't shout, it settles like dust. And the more it settles, the more natural invisibility begins to feel. Not forced, not painful in every moment, just familiar. But familiarity doesn't mean truth. So the question lingers beneath the surface. Were you always this invisible, or did you slowly learn how to disappear? No one is born feeling invisible. No child enters the world believing their voice does not matter. In the beginning, expression is natural. A child speaks, laughs, reaches, interrupts, cries without hesitation. There is no calculation, no second guessing, just presence, just being. So what changes? Often it begins in environments where being seen did not always feel safe or meaningful. Not necessarily through harsh rejection, but through subtle patterns. Moments when excitement was ignored, when emotions were dismissed as too much, when speaking up led to being corrected, interrupted, or misunderstood. And slowly, something begins to shift. The child starts to notice that attention is not guaranteed, that being heard requires timing, permission, or perfection. So they adapt. They become quieter, more observant. They learn to read the room before entering it emotionally. They begin to measure their words before speaking them, not because they lack thoughts, but because they've learned those thoughts may not land. Have you ever found yourself rehearsing what to say, only to decide it's not worth saying at all? This is where invisibility takes root, not as a weakness, but as a response, a way of protecting something fragile, the need to be acknowledged, understood, received. In some environments, being quiet earns approval. Being easy makes things smoother. Not demanding attention becomes a kind of silent reward. And so, invisibility is reinforced. It becomes associated with safety, with acceptance, even with love. But beneath that adaptation, something remains unresolved, a quiet question that never quite disappears. If I don't speak, will anyone notice me at all? This question lingers into adulthood. It shows up in group settings, in conversations, in relationships, not always consciously, but deeply felt. Because the past does not vanish, it echoes. And sometimes the version of you that learned to stay quiet is still trying to protect you, even now. But protection and limitation often look the same from the inside. So the question becomes, are you still adapting to a past that no longer exists, or responding to a present that feels the same? The mind is not designed to make you visible. It is designed to keep you safe. And sometimes safety comes in the form of shrinking. When invisibility becomes a repeated experience, the brain begins to treat it not as an accident, but as a pattern to follow. A quiet rule forms beneath awareness. Stay unnoticed and you avoid discomfort. This is how adaptation begins, not through conscious choice, but through subtle conditioning. Each time you hold back and avoid being interrupted, the mind registers relief. Each time you stay quiet and avoid judgment, the nervous system relaxes just slightly. And so a connection is formed. Silence equals safety. Visibility equals risk. Over time, this association becomes automatic. You enter a group, and before you even speak, your mind begins scanning. Who seems dominant? Who is already being heard? Is there space for you, or should you wait? But waiting often turns into disappearing, because the moment passes, the conversation shifts, and your voice remains where it always was, inside. Have you noticed how quickly your thoughts can change in these moments? You may begin with something simple to say, but within seconds, it transforms. Maybe it's not important. Someone else will say it better. It's too late now. These are not random thoughts. They are protective mechanisms. The mind is trying to prevent something, embarrassment, rejection, being ignored. But in doing so, it creates a deeper isolation. Because the more you stay silent, the less others expect you to speak. And the less they expect it, the easier it becomes to overlook you. A cycle forms, not because you lack presence, but because your presence has been trained to hide itself. Even your body participates in this adaptation. Your posture may close slightly. Your voice may soften without intention. Your eye contact may flicker just enough to avoid being noticed too much. None of this is accidental. It is the body remembering what the mind has learned. And the most difficult part is that this adaptation can feel like your personality, as if this quiet disappearance is simply who you are. But it isn't who you are. It's what you learned to become. So beneath the silence, another question begins to emerge. If your mind learned how to disappear, can it also learn how to return? There is a quiet conflict that rarely shows itself on the surface. From the outside, it may look like calmness or simply silence, but inside, something else is happening. A constant push and pull, a voice that wants to speak and another that immediately holds it back. You feel it in moments that pass too quickly, when a thought rises to the edge of expression and then retreats before it can be seen. Why does this happen? Because invisibility is not just absence, it is protection layered over longing. Part of you wants to be noticed, to be heard, acknowledged, included, to feel your presence ripple through a room, even slightly. But another part remembers something different. It remembers the risk of being ignored, the discomfort of saying something and being met with silence, the subtle sting of not being received. And so it intervenes. Stay quiet. Don't interrupt. Don't make it awkward. These thoughts don't arrive loudly. They feel like instinct, like common sense, but they are shaped by memory. Have you ever felt your heart race slightly just at the idea of speaking in a group? Not because you don't know what to say, but because something deeper tightens inside you. This is the body reacting before the mind can explain. It's not just fear of judgment, it's fear of invisibility being confirmed.
Because when you finally speak after holding back, and no one responds or the conversation moves on, it reinforces the belief you've been quietly carrying. See, it doesn't matter. So the mind chooses the safer option, silence. But silence doesn't remove the desire. It only buries it. And buried desires don't disappear. They linger, creating tension. You listen more than you speak. You observe more than you participate. You exist fully, but express only partially. And over time, this creates a quiet exhaustion, because you are constantly negotiating with yourself, constantly filtering, adjusting, holding back. The world sees someone composed, but inside there is a continuous conversation. Should I say this? Will it matter? Is it worth it? This is the tug of war, not between you and others, but between two parts of you, one that wants to be seen and one that has learned it's safer not to be. And the longer this conflict continues, the more invisible you begin to feel, even to yourself. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unremarkable, when something shifts. Not outside. The room is the same, the people are the same. The conversations still move without waiting. But inside, something pauses. You begin to notice the pattern, not as a feeling this time, but as something observable. You see how often you almost speak and don't, how quickly you dismiss your own thoughts, how naturally you step back even when there is space. And for the first time, a different question appears. Not, why am I invisible? But, when did I start doing this to myself? This realization is not loud. It doesn't come with clarity or certainty. It arrives gently, like light filtering through a closed window. And with it comes a strange mix of emotions. Confusion, because what once felt automatic now feels intentional, as if you've been participating in your own disappearance. But also awareness. You begin to see that invisibility is not always imposed. Sometimes it is maintained, not out of weakness, but out of habit, out of protection. Have you ever caught yourself holding back and suddenly wondered why? In that moment, something important happens. The pattern is no longer invisible. And once something is seen clearly, it cannot return to being unconscious in the same way. But awareness brings discomfort, because now silence feels different. Before it felt natural. Now it feels chosen. And that choice begins to carry weight. You start to question the beliefs beneath it. Is what I say really unimportant? Or have I just learned to treat it that way? These questions don't demand answers. They simply exist, creating space. Space between impulse and action, between thought and silence. And in that space, something fragile begins to form. Not confidence, not yet, but possibility. The possibility that your presence has always been there, just hidden beneath layers of adaptation. The possibility that being unseen is not your identity, but a pattern that can be understood. And perhaps, slowly, gently, something that can begin to change. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, in the same way it began. Reclaiming presence does not begin with becoming louder. It begins with becoming aware of the space you already occupy. Because the truth is, you were never truly absent. You were there in every room, every conversation, every moment. But your presence was filtered, softened, held back. And slowly, something begins to shift. Not in how others respond, but in how you relate to yourself within those spaces. You start noticing the moments where you disappear, not with judgment, but with quiet curiosity. Why did I step back just now? Was there really no space, or did it only feel that way? These questions are small, but they matter, because they interrupt the automatic pattern. Reclaiming presence is not about forcing yourself into attention. It is about allowing yourself to exist without shrinking. At first, this feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. You may speak and feel exposed. You may hold eye contact and feel seen in a way that feels too direct. And in those moments, the old instinct returns, to retreat, to soften, to disappear again. But something is different now. You notice it, and noticing creates choice. You may still step back, but now it is no longer invisible to you. And slowly, that awareness changes the experience. Your voice may still be quiet, but it begins to feel more grounded, less like something borrowed, and more like something that belongs. Because presence is not volume, it is not dominance or constant speaking. It is the quiet permission to exist as you are, without erasing yourself. Have you ever felt a moment where you spoke, and even if no one reacted strongly, it still felt different? As if something inside you settled, simply because you allowed yourself to be expressed. That is where presence begins. Not in being noticed by everyone, but in no longer abandoning yourself. And over time, something subtle happens. You stop measuring your worth by how others respond. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to speak. You stop assuming your voice needs validation to exist. And in that quiet shift, you begin to take up space. Not forcefully, not dramatically, but naturally, like something returning to where it always belonged. Invisibility is often mistaken for absence, but it is not emptiness. It is a state of suspension, a body, a voice, a mind fully present, yet quietly withdrawn. It is the weight of your own awareness folding inward, like a river curling around unseen rocks. The invisible no longer needs to prove itself. It simply begins to recognize its own presence, not through applause or acknowledgement, but through intimate familiarity with its own existence. Imagine standing in a room and feeling not noticed, not overlooked, but simply aware of yourself. Your hands resting, your breath moving, your thoughts lingering, all without seeking permission. The journey here is not linear. It loops, curves, and sometimes stumbles. Some days the old habits return, and silence feels safer once more. But each return is an opportunity to notice. Each pause becomes a mirror, reflecting your quiet persistence. There is subtle strength in the unseen, a resilience built not in confrontation, but in enduring quietly while remaining whole. Your presence becomes like a soft glow, not demanding, not obtrusive, yet undeniable. In this space, invisibility transforms. It is no longer a shadow to hide behind. It is a canvas, a reflective lens, a quiet power that allows you to witness yourself before the world can. You begin to understand, being invisible does not erase you. It teaches you patience, reflection, and the depth of your own awareness. And sometimes, the people who feel unseen most acutely carry the clearest understanding of presence itself. If this reflection felt familiar, if it touched something quiet inside you, know that you are not alone. Many carry this silent pattern,
navigating rooms full of people while feeling like ghosts in plain sight. Here, there is space to acknowledge that experience, a place to explore the hidden corners of your own mind without judgment or pressure. If you'd like to stay connected, this channel is a gentle space for observing, reflecting, and understanding. Sharing your thoughts is optional, but your words may help someone else feel seen. Take care of yourself. You deserve gentleness. You deserve to heal.